The Samsung Galaxy A54 5G looks to be a tempting upgrade for those on the hunt for a mid-range device boasting a refreshed design, high-end materials, and the promise for a 2-day battery. And for the kind of money that Samsung is asking for a device like the Galaxy A54 5G, it needs to bring something special to the table. Is that the case here, or has Samsung overplayed its hand and priced the phone too high? Well, let's find out in the review of the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G. You get the first noticeable sign that Samsung has made some upgrades to make the higher price palatable right after you hold the phone in your hand for the first time. The Galaxy A54 5G comes with Gorilla Corning Glass 5 on both the front and the back, and it feels as premium as the Galaxy S22 or the S23 as a result. The jury is still out there whether a glass back is an upgrade everyone wants, but many have been accusing Samsung in the recent years of using plastic panels on mid-range Galaxy phones that cost more than the competing Chinese phones. And given how much the Galaxy A54 5G costs in most markets, Samsung made the right call by finally addressing that accusation. But while the rear side also looks quite similar to the flagship S23 lineup, and the phone is IP67 certified for water and dust resistance, not everything has been upgraded. At the front, you have a 6.4-inch display with a centered circular cutout for the selfie camera, which is a standard fare for such phones. But the big bezels around the display serve as a reminder that this is a mid-range device and that may drive away some prospective customers. Oh, and as expected, this is a 120Hz display like the A53s, which makes for smooth animations and scrolling. And at least when the Exynos 1380 chip powering the phone isn't struggling to keep up. Finally, the A54 5G is able to reduce blue light emission to as low as 6.5%. That is nearly 2 times improvement over the A53 5G, which could bring the blue light levels down to only 12.5%. The display is complemented by an excellent stereo speaker setup, just as good as you get on the Samsung's flagship phones, if not better. As usual, there's one dedicated speaker that handles one stereo channel while the earpiece stands in for the other. Nonetheless, you get great sound that tackles both low bass and high treble frequencies while also getting considerably loud. Sadly, you either need a 3.5mm to USB converter for traditional headphones or headphones that use a USB-C connector by default to enjoy the wired audio, because Samsung has once again decided to keep the 3.5mm ports out of the spec sheet. The quality of the Galaxy A54 5G's display is something no one will complain about. It's a Super AMOLED panel, so it's got all the good qualities you expect, like vivid colors, deep blacks, and wide viewing angles. And Samsung has upgraded the brightness levels in bright lighting conditions by adding the Vision Booster feature that debuted in the Galaxy S22 series. The Galaxy's A53 5G's screen could hit 800 nits of brightness, but with the Vision Booster, the A54 can go up to 1000 nits. Not that the A53 5G screen had any legibility issues, no matter how dark or bright the environment, but still, an upgrade to the display's brightness levels is always welcome. The A54 5G's biometric features include an optical in-display fingerprint sensor, in addition to facial recognition and the standard PIN, password, and pattern options. And the fingerprint sensor works great with high accuracy and high recognition speed. Samsung has constantly improved the fingerprint reader on its mid-range phones over the years, and at this point, it's as good as it will ever get. The Galaxy A54 5G brings a different set of optics to the table compared to its predecessor, and at first, they seem like downgrades. You now get a triple camera setup as opposed to a quad camera system at the back. It sports a 50MP f1.8 main camera coupled with a 12MP f.2 ultra-wide and a 5MP f2.4 macro sensor. This might seem worse than the 64MP f1.8 standard ultra-wide sensor from the last year's phone, but the fewer megapixels are less likely to play a huge role here. The 50MP standard wide camera also has a bigger sensor, bringing the pixel size from 0.8 up to 1.1. This should translate to better low-light photography, which is always a welcome change. Notably, Samsung has also ditched the 5MP depth sensor, which I didn't miss whatsoever. As for taking photos, you can expect some good images and with vibrant and saturated colors as long as there's enough light. Both the ultra-wide and macro sensors also capture some good photos in bright light. The quality takes a noticeable hit in low light, especially in the case of ultra-wide shots. You can use the night mode to salvage the shots, but the results won't be as impressive as you get from a flagship. The selfies are handled by a 32 megapixel f2.2 sensor and they look pretty good provided there's enough light in the scene. Video recording on this particular phone tops out at 4K 30 frames per second and you only get to pick between 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second in the 1080p resolution. The selfie camera also tops out 4K 30 frames per second resolution. It's not necessarily a deal breaker, but keep in mind you can't do 4K 60 frames per second videos on your phone using any of the four cameras. This should be enough for casual users to capture short videos and clips for social media. The Galaxy A54 5G's trump card, like most Samsung smartphones these days, is the software. The A54 5G has pretty much the same features as you get on a Galaxy S23, except for a couple of high-end features like the Samsung DeX, and comes preloaded with Android 13 and One UI 5.1. And thanks to Samsung's promise of 4 major OS upgrades and 5 years of security updates, the Galaxy A54 5G will be supported for a long time. It probably won't get every new feature from the new versions of Android and One UI in the latter half of that supported period, but still, those who hang on to their phones for many years instead of upgrading every year or two will appreciate what Samsung is offering. The A54 5G is equipped with Samsung's own Exynos 1380 chipset, which is an upgrade from the Exynos 1280 processor that we saw in the Galaxy A53. This is a 5nm chipset and it comes in the 6GB 128GB variant and the 8GB RAM 256GB variant. The Exynos 1380 also impresses with its connectivity features. There is 5G support as you would expect from any modern mobile chip, but also it has features like Wi-Fi 6, which has remained mostly exclusive to Samsung's flagships since their introduction. Samsung hasn't changed the battery inside the Galaxy A54, meaning it has the same 5000 mAh battery as its predecessor. A 5000 mAh battery unit inside a phone like the Galaxy A54 that isn't as powerful as the flagship phones will last you for a long time. You will easily get more than a day's worth with moderate usage even with the refresh rate set to 120Hz. The charging speed hasn't been updated with the Galaxy A54, sticking to the 25 watts wired charging. This will take close to 2 hours to fully charge your device to 100%. The A54 5G doesn't support wireless charging. Overall, you can expect a good battery life. Samsung has made plenty of upgrades to justify the Galaxy A54 5G's increased price, like the glass back, the flagship level autofocus on the rear camera, the brighter display, at least on paper the more powerful Exynos chip. But the A54 5G still lacks in the night photography and there's still some stutter and lag in the phone performance that plagued last year's A53 5G. I think a few software updates will iron out these issues. Well, that's pretty much everything about the Galaxy A54 5G. If you find value in this video, hit the like button. Tell me what you think in the comment section, and please don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, adios.